This is TradeFlow News, bringing you relevant news and insights from around the world. TradeFlow News, enabling trade for SMEs and economies worldwide.
These are some of the key topics that we will be looking into in today's program.
First, let's take a look at the overnight headlines which are impacting the commodity markets.
Iraq has declared force majeure on all oil fields developed by foreign oil companies after military operations in the region disrupted navigation through the Strait of Hormuz, halting most of the country's crude exports, three energy officials with direct knowledge of the decision said. Navigation through the Strait of Hormuz, a choke point for around 20% of global oil and liquefied natural gas supplies, has been severely affected by unprecedented military activity, the oil ministry said in a letter dated March 17 and seen by Reuters. Most Iraqi crude exports transit the strait, and the disruptions have caused storage capacity to reach its limits, the letter said. International oil prices settled at their highest level in nearly 4 years on Friday, as the 3-week-old U.S.-Israeli war with Iran escalated.
The Trump administration waived sanctions on the purchase of Iranian oil at sea for 30 days on Friday in its latest attempt to ease oil prices that have been driven up by the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran. The waiver will bring some 140 million barrels of oil to global markets and help relieve pressure on energy supply, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent posted on X. The move reflects White House worries that the surge in oil prices after nearly 3 weeks of U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran will hurt U.S. businesses and consumers ahead of the November midterm elections, when President Donald Trump's fellow Republicans hope to retain control of Congress.
Moving on to the top news in the energy sector.
2 Indian-flagged liquefied petroleum gas tankers are preparing to sail through the Strait of Hormuz in coming days after a pause in voyages, with no crude oil tankers having transited the waterway in the past 24 hours, according to shipping data and sources. Hundreds of vessels have dropped anchor since Tehran threatened to attack ships attempting to leave the Gulf via the Strait of Hormuz, through which about 20% of global oil and liquefied natural gas flow. The 2 tankers were currently anchored in Gulf waters, according to data from Capella and shipping sources.
The EU has urged member states to lower natural gas storage targets and start refilling reserves gradually to curb demand, as energy prices spike during the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran, the Financial Times reported on Saturday. Energy Commissioner Dan Jorgensen instructed member states to lower the filling target for their gas storage facilities to 80% of capacity, 10 percentage points below the EU's official targets, as early as possible in the filling season to provide certainty and reassurance to market participants, the newspaper said, citing a letter. Gas prices in Europe surged as much as 35% on Thursday as Iranian and Israeli strikes targeted some of the Middle East's most important gas infrastructure, doing damage that will likely take years to repair. Next, we have the top news in metal markets. Aluminium and copper prices extended losses on Friday after news that the U.S. was sending thousands of more troops to the Middle East boosted the dollar and fueled worries that a prolonged conflict and surging oil prices will hurt economic growth and metals demand. U.S. officials told Reuters on Friday that the United States military is deploying thousands of additional Marines and sailors to the Middle East. Base metals were seeing a measure of stability earlier in Friday's U.S. session, but the selling has returned, Marex analyst Ed Mayer said in a note.
The Shanghai Futures Exchange said on Friday that overseas traders will be able to trade its nickel futures and options from April 22, the latest step in opening China's commodity derivatives market to foreign investors. Trading will begin from the night session on April 21. Nickel futures contracts for delivery from May 2026 SNIK 6 onwards will be open to overseas participants, as well as options based on the futures, the exchange said in a notice. Overseas clients may use US dollars as margin, with the exchange valuing those funds at 95% of their face value, SHFE added.
We will now look at the top news in the agricultural sector.
Chicago grains and oilseeds retreated on Friday as the dollar regained ground, while forecasts of rain in dry U.S. wheat belts next week also curbed grain prices. Grains and oilseed prices have broadly tracked fluctuations in crude oil during the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran, reflecting the widespread use of corn and soy in biofuels and investor interest in the crops as an inflation hedge. Brent crude jumped after a choppy trade on Friday, as plans by the US and its allies to boost oil supplies and restore shipping through the Strait of Hormuz tempered investor jitters over attacks on Gulf energy facilities this week.
That is all for today's news on commodity markets. Stay tuned to TradeFlow News as we continue to provide you with more updates. We also invite you to follow us on Twitter at TradeFlow News, which allows you to watch our program on your mobile device or desktop to receive information from there.